If we took all of the gold that has ever been mined in all of human history and put it all in one place in a giant cube here in Washington, D.C., it would look like this. Oh, this is it. I mean, it's pretty big, but I kind of thought it was going to be a lot bigger. So what's all this gold even used for? Well, 45% of it is used for like decoration and jewelry. You got necklaces, you got earrings, you've got this giant Buddha that's just solid gold. There's an old Egyptian coffin made of pure gold. Largest gold coin in the world, it's got a kangaroo on it. It's 45% of all the gold. You got a small portion of all this stuff that gets used for industry, stuff like the fillings in your teeth or electronic components that use the special properties of gold to work. But then a huge portion of all of this gold is just sitting in vaults around the world, mostly in New York and London, in the form of bars, gathering dust. Governments and investors have been on a gold buying spree lately. I mean, look at the price of gold.
President Trump is seeking more control of the Federal Reserve.
Gold prices soared to a record high after US President Donald Trump criticized Federal Reserve.
Russia and China have been buying a lot of gold bars. And Florida is trying to make it so that gold can be used as real money again. It seems like gold is having a comeback. But actually, what I'm learning is that it never went away in the first place.
Would you look at that?
Hello， 大家好，我是李恩。如果要说到人类最伟大或者说最重大的发明是什么，你会想到什么呢？是火药还是轮子？我认为人类最重大的发明其实是金钱或者说货币，因为金钱它不只是一个交易的工具，它是人类文明得以扩张、合作、信任与组织的基础。金钱呢，它是一种集体想象的虚构，而这个集体想象的虚构，让陌生人能够彼此信任、协作，推动整个社会的运作，对吧？我们现在的所有的发展全部都靠金钱的流动，也因为有了金钱，让每个人各行各业所提供的服务价值呢，得以货畅其流的彼此运行。那我们之前呢提到过2025年10月11号的加密货币大崩溃事件，它的底层逻辑当中其实已经出现了系统性结构的不稳定。当然，仍然很多人在寄托的是加密货币会不会是未来的一种人们可以共同集体对于金钱所认同的共同价值。它初始想要成为一个最伟大的货币的概念，去建立在它是可以不受任何的中央银行规定，从去中心化的思想架构出一个人们得以公平交换，不受哪一国的中央银行所约束给控制。那么有趣的是10月11号同一日国际的金价呢却突破到了每盎司4018美元这么高，反映出市场强烈的避险情绪之外，又再一次的证明，每当人们对于任何一个货币的基础感觉到不安或是不稳定的时候，永远都会不自觉的回来找这个地球上最奇妙也是最不容易改变的贵金属，那就是黄金。所以今天我要带大家一起来好好的深入结构黄金是如何成为人类历史上最长久也是最永不衰的千年货币。今天我要用我们的老朋友 Johnny Harris 带我们一起重新的来瞧一瞧黄金是怎么样在这个地球上成为了人们所一直始终不变坚持到底的货币选择。片尾我也会做出一个未来黄金以及美元之间的关系基本判断的看法，就让我们一起来瞧吧。 Let's go。
So how did all of this gold get here to Earth? Well, a lot of the gold that humans mined came to us on one of these, an asteroid loaded up with heavy metals that formed from exploding stars. If you zoom into one of those metals, you'll see some really weird-looking atoms. The electrons are moving nearly the speed of light. This absorbs the blue light and reflects the yellow and red light. Look, it's yellow. It's shiny, like the sun. No other metal does it quite like this. These gold deposits sat in Earth's crust for billions of years, undiscovered. Some rivers dug in, eroding the Earth and revealing these pieces of shiny stardust. It caught the eye of some humans who noticed it was different.
Found this
shiny rock that they dug out of the ground that they could turn into things that it didn't tarnish.
It was a dense metal, but it was somehow soft and workable. It didn't rust. It was incorruptible. Was it eternal?
Gold has chemical properties that have proven to be very interesting and useful to many societies across a kind of many centuries. And some of those properties have to do with its purity, some of them have to do with its malleability, some of them have to do with its indestructibility, and some of it has to do with its aesthetic intrigue.
From China to the Andes, people independently fell under gold's spell, at first for decoration and celebration of their rulers and their gods. Indian healers made medicine with it. To the Inca, gold was the sweat of the sun. They covered their temples and adorned their faces with it. The Greeks made statues. King Solomon plated his temple with it. And 6,000 years ago, this guy was buried with a gold bracelet, with beads, with a scepter, with a sheath. Oh, and not for his sword, but for his... Yeah, I mean, I guess it was pretty valuable stuff. Chinese emperors ingested gold, trying to become immortal, which, spoiler alert, doesn't work. But as humans gathered in larger and larger groups, empires grew, they became greedy and hungry for more land, the story of gold starts to evolve, helping kick off one of the most significant psychological inventions humans ever came up with, the invention of money.
It's a commonly accepted medium of exchange that many people are willing to accept it. In early societies, one of the most common things was cattle.
Yep, we're talking about cows. We'll get back to gold in just a sec. Let's go inside the human brain to see how money evolves. So yeah, instead of just trading something I want for something you want, humans started settling on commonly useful things that they could carry around and that would be valuable to most people.
Historically, lots of objects have served as monies. You got barley, salt.
Cows were something that many people needed for food. They were transportable because they could walk. They were pretty easy to maintain because they ate grass.
This is the most obvious version of money. Something that is practical and useful. It'll help you survive. But they also have drawbacks. Cows don't make good money. That's a weird sentence I never thought I would say. But yeah, they spoil, they're hard to divide. You can't easily bring them to faraway places to do trading. So eventually, humans found something better. That shiny, soft metal pulled from the riverbeds. It was easy to shape, to split up.
So it's easy to carry around, it's easily divisible.
And it just looks cool. I mean, humans love shiny things. So that was like a nice added bonus. It was rare, but not too rare. Like there was enough of it, but it wasn't like everywhere, which like that's an important part of this.
好，补充说明一下哦，黄金为什么适度稀有反而是它的优势？这种刚刚好，就是不会太稀有，也不会太常见。就不像这个钻石或者是某些稀土那样来的太过稀少，因为你太过稀少的缺点就是你没有办法铸造成大量的货币。那它的产量虽然有限，我们都知道黄金其实在地球上它的产量是固定的，不会变哈。而且呢，因为它不容易分解腐蚀，所以呢，黄金的保存性非常非常高。那它的产量呢是足以支撑一个国家甚至全球的货币体系。那么如果太多会怎么样呢？假设黄金像铁跟铜一样普遍的话，那其实简单讲就是价值自然不高嘛，因为不可能随处所见的东西，人们就能够把它赋予一个有意义的价值，不然大家简单说那都是富翁了，对吧？所以它的刚刚好的这种稀缺性呢，是人们最愿意让它来储存财富、进行贸易的一个主要原因。
But gold doesn't feed you. It doesn't keep you warm. It doesn't shelter you. Yes, you can make jewelry and like a dagger out of it or something, but like it's not that intrinsically useful unless we introduce a very powerful ingredient to the mix. It's a very human ingredient called belief. This guy believes gold is valuable, and so does this guy. If someone believes that gold is valuable, and so does another person, that belief turns metal into a system. He trades it for wheat. I'll give you gold, you give me wheat. You then take that gold and go trade it for salt or fabric. Gold becomes valuable not because of what it does, but because what we believe it means. So this is a big psychological step for us. From cattle, which has utility, to gold, which has no utility but is scarce, durable, divisible, universal, and don't forget, nice and shiny. And all this is made possible because of collective belief. Belief that if I have this metal, I will be able to go use it to buy things that help me survive. And if everyone believes it, then it works.
Gold and silver became the dominant monies throughout the world.
If collective belief can turn metal into money, as a collective, I believe that we can change a broken media ecosystem into something better. Me and my team have been working on a new chapter trying to build a place for community-led journalism. You can join the waitlist at newpress.com to get early access as soon as it's ready. But for now, we're talking about gold. So, the belief in gold spreads throughout the world a few thousand years ago, not just as a thing that we do to worship the gods, but as a means of trade, a currency, a money. This also happened with gold's forgotten cousin, silver. Poor silver. It just didn't get those fast-moving electrons to make it shiny. And there's like too much of it too. Anyway, soon gold was being stamped into standardized coins, being used as a near universal form of money all around the world. It was magic, but it was also mania. When the Spanish landed on the shores of modern-day Mexico in 1519, they met the Aztec civilization, and one thing caught their eye: gold. Lots of gold, including these gifts that the Aztec king was presenting to these Spaniards, giving it to them for free. The Aztecs were using lots of gold, but not as a currency, but as decoration, for worship, for armor, for blades. It wasn't economic, but to the Spanish, gold had become economic, a means of trade. It was wealth, and here it was in extreme abundance, and they wanted it. Or in the words of one Spanish conqueror, we suffer from a disease of the heart that can only be cured by gold. The Spanish ended up massacring the Aztecs with their weapons and their diseases. They took as much gold as they could find, these statues and masks and jewelry and blades, melted them down, shaped them into uniform units of value, and stamped them with a seal of authority. They spent the next century ripping through the Americas, chasing every rumor of golden cities and sacred wealth, places like El Dorado, Cibola. Men fevered by greed for this shiny metal stuff, fueled by conquest and spoils that built their cathedrals, and ended up kicking off a race among the European empires, a race for more and more gold.
Let's not forget what the Spanish found when they came to the New World. Gold. Mountains of it.
And then, of course, this leads to a cottage industry of renegade sailors, sometimes hired by other empires, trying to intercept these ships going to and from the New World, with hopes of finding one of these chests full of gold. Now, I was disappointed in my reporting when I discovered that most pirates weren't actually after gold and didn't find a lot of gold. They were after more boring stuff like lumber, and they didn't really have these X marks the spot type maps where they buried their chests of gold.
Look, it's the X. X marks the spot.
That's mostly a myth, but it's also kind of a useful example of how gold inspired these like big grand stories of adventure, of jackpot, how it enlivened the imagination and inflamed this greed in people's minds. I mean, I get it. How sick is the idea of a bunch of gold that never rusts buried somewhere in the Caribbean, ready to turn a peasant into a count?
Greetings.
God, I love the Count of Monte Cristo from the early 2000s. So by the 1800s, this psychological leap is complete. There is a near universal belief in gold as a currency, a means for exchange, the universal money. Big European empires had already torn across continents in search for it, and now it was the turn of regular people, the dreamers, the risk takers, the desperate men who joined the hunt for gold. Men with nothing to lose, chasing rumors of riches, and doing pretty reckless and extraordinary things, all for a shot at striking gold. A big group of them in 1849 fled into the western United States, helping build California, becoming the 49ers, all in search for gold. These guys are in Canada's Yukon, where it is very cold, and they're looking for gold. I mean, this happened everywhere. South Africa, Australia, the Amazon, each place the same story. Men intoxicated by the idea of getting rich off of gold, doing whatever it takes to get their hands on this stuff, even forcing others to mine it for them. This frenzy of hope, chaos, migration. It was gold fever, and it didn't just move markets, it moved human beings, entire populations. It was, as the writer of this excellent book puts it, a murderous, cruel, intoxicating, brutal adventure that swallowed an entire civilization and spat it out as coins. Man, I love when rigorous historians write beautiful language. Okay, let's dive back into the brain really quick and see what's going on next. We're about to take another big psychological leap here, the leap from a belief in this soft, shiny metal to a belief in paper.
One of the problems with physical gold is that if you want to trade it in large quantities, it's pretty heavy to carry around a lot of gold. And what people decided was that they could deposit their gold into a bank. It would give them a banknote, which was essentially an IOU. 1 ounce of gold was worth approximately $20. So basically, if you had a $20 bill, you could go into a bank and redeem it for 1 ounce of gold.
Most individuals, when they got paid, they got to pay envelopes stuffed with banknotes. So that was the everyday medium of exchange. As long as you trusted that the banknotes were good, you really didn't think about much which bank had issued the notes. They all exchanged 1-to-1 against each other and against gold and silver dollars.
If you wanted gold instead of the banknote, you could come in and redeem the banknote and they would give you gold.
So now instead of believing in gold, we are believing in banks, trusting them that if they give us this piece of paper, it actually represents the gold that they are holding safe in their vault. And that at any moment, if I needed the gold, I could go to the bank, get the gold. That is now a pretty far abstraction from cows, something that feeds us. We're now carrying around paper. But once again, it follows the same rule that if everyone believes it, and if the banks don't give us any reason not to believe it, then this worthless piece of paper turns into economic power, a currency. And in fact, if we can do that, it's really convenient. It makes trade way easier.
好，简单说一下这个时候其实本质上面呢并没有改变，我们仍然相信的是黄金，只是说银行的借据，也就是纸币可以兑换黄金，我们只是把这个信任转移，这也就是所谓的金本位制的时代。好，就是纸币本身没有内在价值，但是它的价值是来自于可以兑换黄金的这个承诺。那当然更进一步，你也可以说，真正那时候人们相信的是发行纸币的机构，也就是中央银行会兑现这个承诺，这是一种间接的信任。哈
Theoretically, everyone thrives here. So, yeah, silver. Okay, yeah. Instead of gold in the vault, a lot of economies had silver in the vault, and a lot of economies were trying to have both metals, giving them each a specific value and pegging that value so that it wouldn't change too much. But this becomes a problem. It's really hard to have 2 metals as the foundation of your paper money. And then suddenly, if there's a big discovery of silver in Nevada or something, there's way more silver, so it throws off the value of silver, but it's pegged to the value of gold, and so all this arbitrage happens. This was a huge decades-long debate here in the United States. It got really political. You've got this guy running for office, mostly on a platform of silver, and some people think that The Wizard of Oz is an entire commentary on this debate between gold and silver. And while reporting this story, I was multiple times very tempted to go down this rabbit hole. This is a video about gold, not about silver. Sorry, silver. So we'll save that one for another day. And indeed, by 1900, gold, this shiny metal that humans have been using for thousands of years to do trade, endured as the one metal that we would base our entire economy off of, at least here in the United States. But a lot of countries too. We set a firm standard. $20 gets you 1 ounce of gold. There's a finite number of gold. It doesn't fluctuate too much. Anyway, this was called the gold standard. And the United States and a bunch of other big countries were on the gold standard in the early 1900s. Okay, let's get back to the human brain because we're about to go through our third massive leap in the psychology of money. Let me warn you, this one's kind of weird, and I went to college for this one, monetary policy and economics, and I'm going to do my best to explain it, but it starts to get a little bit wacky. And we're also entering some controversial territory. Economists, who are much smarter than I, debate this stuff, what I'm about to say, and they all have different takes, and they have strong feelings about it. So I'm going to do my best here, but like in the comments, you're going to see some strong opinions. I welcome them. Just be nice. So it's the early 1900s. Banks have gold in their vault. They give you a piece of paper that says you're entitled to the gold in the vault. But it turns out human beings are struggling to adopt the paper thing fully.
There are a series of financial panics. You probably don't want to get into the causes of the panics. The banks had a limit to how many banknotes they could issue. So when people wanted more currency and they couldn't get banknotes, they would take gold and silver coins out of the bank vaults. And now the banks are losing reserves. Now they have a problem.
So here they all are at the same time rushing to the bank to pull their money out, all at once. This is not good for an economy that grows when you give banks money to lend out to other people and trust that not everyone's going to try to take it all out at the same time. We made a whole video about this, how modern finance and credit works and how that multiplies the money supply in these weird ways. You can check that out. But for now, just look at this picture of a bunch of people on Wall Street trying to get their gold out and know that this is not good for the economy. So the US government decides that having all of these decentralized private banks who are giving out paper money is just too prone to these vulnerabilities, to everyone going and taking all the money out at the same time. So they decide to make one bank to rule them all, aka the central bank, aka the Federal Reserve, aka the Fed. We're just gonna call it the Fed from now on. Why did the US government decide they needed to centralize this around a single bank?
It's a federal institution that will cope with potential panics and shortages of currency and shortages of bank reserves.
The Fed would be the big bank that would be given a bunch of power to set the rules for the rest of the banks.
By issuing more currency when it's desired.
Now, it was still technically pegged to the gold standard, but a huge difference was now you couldn't just go to the bank and exchange your paper for gold. And the Fed would be in charge of controlling how many of these banknotes were floating around the economy.
And so in the United States, we have the Federal Reserve that is the monopoly provider of dollars.
Which in turn determines how the economy works, how people spend money, how people borrow money. And their goal at first was just to make sure that this doesn't happen again.
好，这边我再稍微解释充分一下，就是说18世纪末到19世纪初，那个时候刚开始所谓的银行体系其实是高度分散的，是各州自行发行自己的纸币，没有统一的监管。那结果呢，到了1837年的时候，因为土地的投机，各州政府他们纸币就滥发。好，简单说就是到底发行这个纸币有没有可能真的是有相应的这个黄金兑换呢？到底有没有诚实呢？不晓得。那总统杰克逊呢，他就发布了一个叫做铸币流通令，好，要求说你购买土地呢，你就必须要用真金白银，好，黄金跟白银来支付，所以才会引发了这个银行的挤兑跟倒闭潮，因为才发现说太多这个纸币的滥发，其实银行根本没有相应这么多的黄金。那当然就算有那你把这个黄金全部都给提光了那银行相对而言它也就没有再多的纸币可以去支付出来了，这才造成了金融危机，在1837年、1857年还有1813年呢多次恐慌，都是跟黄金兑换的困难有关。美国联邦政府呢也才决定建立所谓的中央银行，但是要注意这个时候就变成了一个很重要的信任价值的转移，也就是从对黄金的信任呢变成转向你必须要对这个制度信任，也就是信任中央银行它发行这个纸币呢有一套合理合规的一个方法呢，使得这个风险降低。当然你一定会好奇啦，那难道真的人发明的制度有可能是完美无缺，可以一直信任下去的吗？ OK， 那我们就要继续看了。
Look at this fancy machine that the Fed has. Not a literal machine, this is completely symbolic. Don't overinterpret the analogy here. So, to be clear, we're still on the gold standard at this point. It's like 1913 or something. Every 20 bucks is pegged to an ounce of gold. But now, the Fed has all of these levers to play with. These levers that invisibly incentivize people to borrow money, that's the interest rate, to spend money. And with their new power, the Fed starts fiddling around with all of these levers. Hey look, if you lower the interest rate, more people will borrow money, they'll spend money, they'll start businesses, more jobs.
Many critics have said that they kept interest rates below where they should have been. They made credit too abundant, and so you had an overinvestment boom in the 1920s that, although there were genuine investment opportunities due to technological change, electrification, the automobile, things like that.
Wow, look, it's an economic boom. It's the roaring 20s. The stock market just quadrupled in 5 years. Times are good, thanks in part to the Fed pulling some of these levers. Though this, like many assertions I'm about to say, is kind of debated. Try not to get sucked down the economic debate rabbit hole here. So things were good in the 1920s, maybe a little too good. Uh-oh.
The Fed over-amplified that boom and raised it to an unsustainable pitch.
The bubble bursts, the good times ended, and the US and the rest of the world falls into a Great Depression.
The money supply in the early years of the Great Depression, starting in 1930, there are bank runs that drain a lot of the gold out of the banking system into individuals' wallets and under their mattresses.
Again, we made a whole video about what recessions and depressions are. Check that out. Okay, but watch what happens here. One of the very important levers that the Fed has on this symbolic machine is to put more money into the economy. And they do this through a bunch of different indirect mechanisms. But the result is there's more money to go around, and borrowing money is cheaper. They can make the interest rate go down. So it's like, doesn't cost that much to borrow money. During the Great Depression, most economists agreed that the Fed should have done this. So why aren't they using this? It's the Great Depression. People aren't spending money. People are losing their jobs. Lower the interest rate, get more money into the economy. But look, they can't really do that very much. The money supply is fixed to gold.
If the Fed started to issue more notes, it could reach a point where it was constrained by not having enough gold to back them.
If you lower the interest rate, then people are going to borrow a bunch of money. But then what if they show up to the bank with all that money and demand gold bars in exchange for their paper? They might do that. Everyone's kind of panicky. So the Fed is envisioning this nightmare scenario where all of their gold goes away and the whole system falls apart. So instead of lowering the interest rate, they hike it up. They defend their gold. The historians who debate this stuff don't agree on all of this, but they do agree that this course of action made the whole thing worse, made the Great Depression last a lot longer. 10 years of misery.
And so the Federal Reserve, instead of saying, hey, we made a big mistake, we shouldn't have caused this bubble in the economy, they said, you know what, we need even more power to control the money supply. And that's what happened.
That resulted in the president coming out and saying, hey, the gold standard really just screwed us over. We weren't able to pull all of our levers because we were pegged to this obsession with being backed by gold. So let's be done. Enough is enough. We need flexibility in a crisis. And if you want to go way down the technical rabbit hole, look up the unholy trinity. That's a very technical explanation of what's going on here. All the sources are in the description, as always. So it's 1933, and FDR comes out with an executive order saying that Americans need to turn in their gold bars in exchange for flimsy dollar bills. And the government could now print as much or as little money as they wanted to guide the economy's behavior to keep it humming along. And hopefully keep prices stable. Now, you don't have a finite thing called gold. That is like, there's only so much of it, because now you just have an infinite thing called dollars and a central bank who can effectively print as much of it as they want. The more they print, the less each is worth, so prices go up. That's inflation.
事实结果证明呢，联准会中央银行呢，跟地方州政府银行啊，根本没有什么差别。1920年的时候，联准会为了刺激经济呢，就用这种低利率政策，导致信贷大量扩张，股市跟房地产呢，就不断的被购买，被争相追逐嘛，银行又大量放贷，其实讲白了，就是又出现了纸币的发行远超过黄金的储备，那是不是又形成了潜在的兑换风险？所以当市场信心一动摇，股市、房地产大跌的时候呢，民众开始兑换黄金。只是那个时候，因为中央银行仍然坚守着金本位制，就不继续提供纸币的流动性的资源，反而是为了维持黄金储备呢，它进而提高了利率。那这个就进一步压垮了经济。但是这个时候，美国政府的思维呢就转变了，就变成反而觉得这就是一个金本位制黄金的坏处。好，可是这个到底是黄金造成的吗？当然不是，而是为了人们想要花钱消费，美其名是刺激经济的发展，但是从另外一个角度来讲，也有许多过度的铺张跟浪费。可是无论如何，美国政府接下来动起的脑筋，那就是取消掉金本位制，转向将美元视为是法定货币的制度。换句话说，美国政府就必须去说服全世界呢，都来相信它的美元，从相信黄金这件事情改为相信我美国政府。但是我认为这里面最讽刺的就是，你连金本位制中央银行它都没有办法控制这个货币发行的合理性了，凭什么过去要相信中央银行，到现在要再进一步相信美国政府呢？这个就是牵动着到底全世界人们是怎么样一步一步转移信任的。那这个转移信任当中，是否就存在越来越多不合理的信任危机
？Anyway, let's go back into the brain, because this is like the biggest psychological leap of them all. Money is still belief. But without the gold standard, the belief is in the government, in their paper, even if it's not backed by anything. It is a belief in the government's ability to run this machine properly. This is called fiat money, and it's a whole lot different than cows, where we started. But starting in 1933, this is how money was valued in the United States by a decree from above. Now, full disclosure, I went to Brigham Young University, studied econ, and studied under a school of thought that was very much like pro-Fed. The Fed and fiat money is sort of like the best thing we got going. It makes mistakes sometimes, but like it's better than the gold standard. I intentionally talked to two economists for this story who were like a little more skeptical of that take to kind of help balance me out. And my hope is that the story I just told you about this moment in time is a fair characterization. But if there's any professional economists watching, I would love your take on this. Like, I would love a good faith critique or like alternative view or whatever. Like, economics is not science, it is psychology. And so we get to debate it endlessly. So gold is out. And so what, are we at the end of the road for this shiny metal, this thing that humans have loved forever? Not so fast. So, 1944, World War II is winding down. The US is realizing that in just a matter of years became the most powerful country in the world and defeated the two rising empires and was now on top of everything. So they get all of their ally countries together, a couple dozen countries, in a hotel in the mountains of New Hampshire with the goal of designing a new global economic system, a set of rules that everyone will play by. And the US, of course, takes the lead on what this system will look like. They propose that instead of creating some universal global currency, as some were proposing, the world should instead opt for the US dollar to become the universal, globally accepted currency that everyone else's currency would be like attached to. And the rest of the countries are like, seems kind of sketchy that we're just trusting you and your dollar. And the US says, okay, but remember, all of our dollars are still backed up with gold. Normal citizens can't turn it in for gold, but we promise to you countries that all of your dollars can be turned in for real gold bars, $35 per ounce. You can come to us and exchange them for gold whenever you want, and we'll promise we'll keep it in the vault. Speaking of the vault, look at our vault. This is Fort Knox. It's in Kentucky. This is where we keep our gold, and we have a lot of it now because a lot of you all, world, gave us your gold in exchange for weapons we made for you during the war. So the dollar is king, and we'll back it up with gold. Take it or leave it, guys. And they indeed took it. And the dollar became the king of global trade and investing, and gold was once again at the center of our concept of money, but not for long. Turns out the US couldn't keep its promise to back up all of its dollars with gold in its vaults. They were printing more money, they were giving it out, and the world catches on, and some countries get kind of pissed.
Until finally, there were so many dollars that they started to redeem them, Germany and France in particular.
Like France apparently sends a Navy ship in the 60s to show up to New York to be like, hey, we're gonna give you our dollars, we want our gold.
And the Treasury ran out of gold, and we shut the gold window in 1971.
I directed Secretary Connally to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold or other reserve assets.
And finally, the president at the time, who is President Nixon, comes out and is like, okay. Yes, we don't have the gold anymore. You got us. But guys, come on. Be reasonable. We're all used to using the dollar by now. The whole global economy is used to this. We're America. We've proven that we're stable. You can trust us. I mean, look at our economy and look at our military. We are safe and stable. Use our currency, invest in our government, and you can sell those bonds whenever you want. We'll give you dollars and you can use that to buy like oil and whatever you want in the global economy. We promise we're good. And the world, without much choice, was like, okay, fine. And just when we thought we couldn't get any further away from cows, here we are. Our concept of money takes one more bonus step to here, where so much of the global economy runs on a currency that is built off of collective belief in a story, in a system, in an S with a line through it, in 19 people who sit in a fancy white building in Washington, D.C. and try to accurately predict the future and make decisions to pull proverbial levers to ensure that the dollar doesn't lose its value in all of our minds. So have they done a good job? Well, a lot of people say yes.
People from the Fed would say, look, we've done a great job. You know, the Federal Reserve is better than putting this into a private market like we had before the Fed.
That being able to create new money in the economy helped us recover relatively quickly in the 2008 crash or during COVID. But a lot of people say no, that the Fed does a terrible job.
But I think the evidence says that actually they have not done very good. You know, the Fed basically caused the Great Depression.
That inflation is out of control and that the people running it are never faced with the consequences for not doing a good job. Several economists economists I talk to think that it's a lot of power to put in a government agency that isn't incentivized by the free market. But most monetary economists, the people who study this stuff, like the vast majority, think that, hey, the Fed's not perfect, doesn't get it right all the time, but like this is the best version of a modern complex economy, and it generally works.
What you described as the Fed has made some mistakes, but we can't imagine living without it, that's probably 90% of the econ profession, or maybe higher. But everybody now has grown up in a world where it's hard to imagine what things would look like without the Fed. And it's especially hard to imagine once you're on a fiat money standard. If you're on a fiat money standard, somebody has to control the quantity of fiat money. And if it's not a central bank, how do you do that?
I'm actually not going to have an opinion on this. I'm still kind of making up my mind. So let's wind this video down by getting back to the central question at the beginning that we started with, which is, why are people buying gold again? Why is this happening?
The price of gold is near an all-time high.
Have you seen the price of gold lately?
Gold is up more than 13% this year.
So since we've gone totally off the gold standard since 1971, and in fact, even before that, people have started holding gold as a hedge against inflation.
Despite all of these mental leaps and these vast abstractions of economic value, here we are, turning back to gold. First off, foreign governments never got rid of their gold. The US still has huge stores of thousands and thousands of tons of gold in Fort Knox and other facilities. And so do a lot of other countries. A lot of countries store their gold in the United States, in New York City, in this gold reserve that is buried like 50 feet into the bedrock of Manhattan. And it just sort of sits there, gathering dust and being a little reserve, a just in case type of thing. But a lot of regular people, investors, buy gold too, whenever they start to feel a little bit sketchy about the big psychological bargain they've made with the government. All of this is pretty, actually, kind of squishy. It's very mental. All of this requires us to believe, but over here really requires us to believe. And even trust a US government and an economy. And recently, that trust has been waning, and government have also been kind of all over the place recently. The stop and go of tariffs from the Trump administration's first few months in office got people really spooked. Like, can we trust these people with our entire sense of value in our currency? And now that Trump is attacking the Fed and threatening to control it, people are turning to gold in a bigger and bigger way. And at least for now, while I'm recording this, there seems to be some trepidation about people believing in the dollar. So that's why you see this kind of going back in time on the psychological leaps.
In the last few months, well, since the start of the Trump administration, there's been a loss of faith in the dollar vis-a-vis other fiat currencies. People are worried inflation may go up, either because of real shocks like the imposition of tariffs.
So people are rushing to other stores of value that don't rely on a central government. The shiny metal, gold, is one of them, but there's another currency that people are opting for that kind of looks a little bit like gold, at least mentally.
Bitcoin is essentially the new gold.
It's becoming really the true digital gold.
I think a lot of young people are comfortable with digital assets and digital currencies and would switch over to Bitcoin or something different. Either one of those things would provide a check on the Federal Reserve, because people would have an alternative, and the Fed would know that if they created too much inflation, people would switch over.
Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies may represent a future path for this psychological journey of money that we've seen here, but it seems to be too early to tell. But it does seem like we are entering a new chapter on this journey of our sense of value and currency and trust and belief. I'm not sure what it's going to look like. I don't presume to know, but as we've seen in this story, I think it's a pretty good guess that no matter what happens next, no matter what we invent with crypto or whatever, that shiny metal, that thing that has fascinated us for thousands of years, the thing that can be divided and stored and doesn't tarnish and that shines like the sun, gold, I think, will always remain in the background as this thing that we turn to when things feel uncertain.
好，希望今天这一集呢，让大家有一个非常历史宏观的了解，就是货币其实它永远本质上是一个集体的心理信任。 其实这也是为什么过去很多人常讲，就是说美国它为什么必须要扮演世界警察的一个使命。虽然在国家的层级来讲，美国并没有这样的一个义务，可是如果美国想要维持它的美元霸权，也就是我们看到它想要全世界人都相信美元是一个可以值得信任的法定货币，那么它就必须要维持世界和平。这是过去美国一直在做的，认为它只要维持的世界的稳定，那么呢全世界人就会继续使用美元。可是现在一个最巨大的心理鸿沟已经发生了，那就是美国不断的印钞票的量化宽松之下，满足了它无限制的举债时候，人们开始对美元的信任已经重新做了一个新的检视，那就是如果你美国可以永远都靠负债这一套，就能够在全世界不断的去消费，不断的去自产，不断的去购买，永远你的购买力就是大过我们其他国家的时候，那么我们要如何的来相信这样的一套美元机制，它对我们全世界人类而言是公平的，对吧？合理吧？所以呢，这就又牵扯到为什么虚拟货币像比特币一度成为人们新兴的一个依赖。可是真的是如此吗？虚拟货币真的是一个取代黄金甚至取代美元的一个更好的去中心化的产品吗？我们都知道，从刚刚的介绍，就是黄金在历史的洪流当中，它永远都是一个去中心化的东西。至今为止，世界上没有任何一个国家，包含美国自己，都敢完全的不持有黄金。为什么？因为各国政府永远都无法确定能不能够对于美元有一个绝对高度的信任，哪怕美国自己。而比特币或者虚拟加密货币这个市场，如今在我的角度来讲，它也越来越快要成为一个泡沫了。为什么？因为去中心化这个概念，随着美国政府介入的稳定币的结构，透过美国政府的天才法案 Genius Act 呢，要求所有的币商在发行稳定币的时候，都必须要购买同等值的美国国债。那这又说回来，不就又变成跟美元挂钩在一起了吗？当加密货币市场的稳定币强迫要跟美元挂钩在一起的时候，那这不就又回到变成取决于是否美元值得相信吗？那么去中心化的概念，我认为它逐渐在崩溃中，而这就会使得未来可能人们终究只对于这个摸得到储备量不会改变，并且没有任何一个政府能够来决定数量的黄金，它那奇妙的公平的力量永远存在每个人心中。所以我对于未来美元跟黄金的看法，必须坦白说，那就是我仍然相信黄金它已经经过了几千年的历史证明，它永远会是人们心目当中唯一可以定锚最公平的东西。也因此，如果万一加密货币市场终究如同郁金香迎来一场盛大泡沫的话，那么恐怕黄金会将被冲上更可怕的历史新高点。当然，这一切是否会发生，还有以及你是否想要了解为什么加密货币市场会如我刚刚所说的已经成为了一个跟美元脱离不了的金融商品的话，那我就强烈建议你一定要来看这部